We come to the hour of our morning meditation on the last Sunday of the year 1953. This Christmas season just passed has heard many expressions from choir and pulpit with respect to the birth of the Christ child, commemorating the coming of our Lord on earth. I would like to meditate a little on this theme with you this morning, and in preparation for that meditation, let us have a moment of devotion. Our gracious Lord and Holy King, while the peoples of the world remember thy coming as a babe in a manger, we would consider thy coming into the hearts and the lives of the children of men, that thy kingdom may come. We realize that as the King of the kingdom came and walked among men, the next natural step is for the kingdom of the King to come. And to this end we remember that thou didst teach men to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed is thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. And as we on this day, so near the close of this year, forgive others in whatsoever way they may have trespassed against us, so would we open our hearts to receive thy forgiveness. That we may be forgiven with respect to those things which were done yet ought not to have been done. Those things which were felt and said which ought not to have been felt and said. And likewise, in extending forgiveness to others, we would receive thy forgiveness with respect to those things which ought to have been done and were not, with respect to those things which ought to have been felt and said and yet were not. That we may receive thy kingdom into our hearts and minds and bodies, into our lives and circumstances, to the end that we may, in the new year that is at hand, reveal on earth the evidence that thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. In our meditations, we have recognized the gospel of our Lord as the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The world has long celebrated the coming of the King, and has come to anticipate what is called his second coming. But by and large, the so-called Christian world has ignored the coming of his kingdom, assuming that his kingdom could not come in fact until he, in some mysterious fashion, should come again. Such an attitude suggests the belief that his first coming was not adequate to the establishment of his kingdom on earth. Many tender and sweet songs have been written in recognition of his birth in the form of the babe Jesus. The finer instincts in human hearts have been stirred by the thought of that babe in the manger. And the stories have been recounted with respect to the shepherds and the wise men. But the primary purpose of his coming has largely been ignored. For of what value is the coming of a king if his kingdom does not likewise come? Is it necessary that we, as human beings, steadfastly ignoring the message of his first coming, should require that he must come again before his kingdom can be established among men? If his first coming cannot establish his kingdom, what assurance have we that human beings would let any second coming establish his kingdom? The picture portrayed with respect to that second coming assumes that the matter will be taken out of the hands of men, and that he will arbitrarily impose his kingdom, regardless of what human beings do, and in spite of them, not because of them. But such a concept places the load of responsibility on the king. And does not truly share that load of responsibility with the citizens of the kingdom. A kingdom that is imposed upon unwilling peoples establishes a realm of dictatorship, of tyranny. And our king has no intention of establishing a dictatorship or a realm of tyranny. The citizens of his kingdom must willingly and eagerly accept the privilege of living in that kingdom as citizens of it. He came, and we know the story. The tender sentiments, the sweetness, the beauty, the vibrancy of life, the wonder of love found in that outworking is something from which human beings have largely separated themselves, and they have considered it only as they have celebrated in memory the event. How shall his kingdom come? We ourselves know by our lives and our experiences that something of the influence of his kingdom has most assuredly extended into our lives. We have tasted of the reality of that kingdom, and from what we have known in actual experience, in personal experience, if we consider it without the obscuring veils of darkness which tend to arise from old world patterns, has a peculiar and distinct character. That which we have experienced, be it ever so little, and though we know it to be inadequate as yet, has had in its coming into our lives exactly the same qualities which we find so richly portrayed in relationship to his birth. For we have found, to whatever degree we have yielded to his kingdom and let it have meaning in our hearts and lives, that unspeakable sweetness, the delicacy, and yet the overwhelming, all-inclusive quality of love. We have found in it a beauty which can transform even a stable in a manger into a heavenly place. We have recognized that regardless of external factors which may be pressing in round about. Heavenly music, as of an angel's song, reached into our hearts. And while we were in the process of letting this kingdom have real meaning, we found expressions of wisdom coming into the realm of our awareness. The wise men. And in this experience we have received rich gifts into our own lives. For it was indicated by our Lord himself when he walked among men that as he had received both from God and through channels on earth the things of God, so likewise should we. He indicated that as he had received ill things at the hands of men which were not the gifts of God to him, so might we also expect to receive certain ill things from the hands of men who were not under the control or dominion of God. But regardless of that which we might receive, from men who were not under the dominion of God, he indicated that we should receive something from God. Now the master, as a babe, received certain gifts from God. Gold and frankincense and myrrh are specifically mentioned. But he received these gifts from God through the wise men. They were the agents of God, making available to him the gifts of God. He received responsive recognition from the shepherds. And in this response, there was one of the gifts essential to a king: response. For he who is a king in name only, having no response, is not in fact a king. It is only as there is response to a king that there can be acknowledgement of a king, and only so can he express his kingly qualities and make them known within the scope of his kingdom. As the king came into the world, it was signified by that very fact that the world was included in his kingdom. From his standpoint, according to the divine pattern, the world was included in his kingdom, else the king would not have come into the world. as a babe or by any other means. Regardless of appearances, in spite of all the ways in which human beings had spoiled the kingdom through rebellion and traitorous conduct, this world was still and is now a part of his kingdom. He did not go into someone else's kingdom to try to take someone else's kingdom to himself. He came into the realm that belonged in his own kingdom, that the fact might be made evident in the world. Now that his coming is in a safe distance in the past, 19 centuries or more, human beings feel quite free to celebrate that coming in the limited fashion that the world uses, as long as they can postpone the idea of the coming of his kingdom to some fantastic future. But the world of men has never admitted that the world is, in fact, now a part of his kingdom. Human beings have consistently taken the attitude that this world is the kingdom of the devil, and that only by some fantastic means could this kingdom be taken away from the devil, that it might become the kingdom of our King. We remember the manner in which it is presented in Revelation. And the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. Now it does not say, and this world has become the kingdom of our Lord. For this world has been the kingdom of our Lord all the while, although human beings have not acted like it. The statement is, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. Once we accept the basic fact that this world is now and always has been contained in his kingdom, regardless of the nature of function of the people living in the world, we can begin to be in position to recognize the true nature of that which he brought into the world when he came as a babe born in a manger. Only so can we begin to see that the evidence of the coming of the kingdom was supposed to follow the evidence of the coming of the king. the evidence of the coming of the kingdom into manifestation, a revelation of the fact was supposed to follow the evidence of the coming of the King. But that evidence has not followed, though 19 centuries have passed. Instead, when we look into the world, we find evidence that the will of God is not being done in millions of lives, that the real control from the standpoint of that heavenly kingdom has not been revealed on earth. There is chaos and fear, misery, suffering, disease, every sort of ill thing appearing to have control. As a representative of that King who walked among men so long ago, I am interested in having citizens in the kingdom. I am interested in people, that they might share the manifestation of the evidence of that kingdom. In fact, human beings are essential to that manifestation of the evidence of the fact of the kingdom on earth. But my interest in people as such, even so, is secondary. Secondary to the fact of the King and the fact of his kingdom, whether it is as yet evident or not. The reality of the King and the kingdom, that is basic. The rest is incidental. As long as human beings imagine that the kingdom as such is not a fact, they think that they must go through some kind of fantastic experience in order to bring that kingdom on earth, which is not the truth of the matter at all. The kingdom is here and always has been here. It was never away from here. This is not the whole kingdom, but the kingdom is here and always has been here. And once we clearly see that basic truth, we can see that we do not have to go through some peculiar experience in order to get the kingdom to come. Our concern is that the evidence of the kingdom shall come into manifestation. Thy kingdom come into manifestation. But the kingdom already is, and it is already here. So, as long as we are imagining that God's kingdom does not extend to here, the human being feels that he must somehow make God's kingdom extend to here. And then he imagines everything will automatically change and be thus and so, which is not the case at all. The kingdom is here. But there has been very little evidence of the fact. So our concern is with the coming of the evidence of the presence of the kingdom. The kingdom itself is the evidence of the presence of the king. The kingdom itself is, in fact, the evidence of the presence of the king. Now, human beings have been looking in one way or another for evidence of the presence of the king without being concerned about revealing evidence of the presence of the kingdom. And it leads to all kinds of fantastic concepts and beliefs, longings and futile desires. The kingdom is the evidence of the presence of the king of the kingdom. So we need not be so concerned about making the evidence of the king present, or be that it may be seen. We should be concerned about revealing the evidence of the presence of the kingdom, and the kingdom itself will reveal the evidence of the presence of the king. Once we accept the kingdom as being here as a basic fact, the rest is really quite easy. But even here on Sunrise Ranch, in actual fact, the consciousness of the members of this unit has not, as yet, properly adjusted or become a condition to this basic truth. And the pattern of function has not been in harmony with that truth. If we then would derive the greatest possible blessings from the Christmas season, now past for this year, and be prepared thereby for the greatest possible expression of service in the year that is at hand, we need more than anything else to become thoroughly conditioned to these basic truths, so that what we do and say, what we feel and express in various ways, shall in the new year conform to the truth. Our lives shall give evidence of our conviction of the truth. In the coming of the King 19 centuries ago, in spite of the limitations that were present in the world, there was that which characterized his coming. All the sweetness, the beauty, the vibrancy of life, the tender and what we might call the magical aspects of his birth and babyhood. He received these things from God through other human beings on earth. He received the opportunity of birth through his mother and his father. He received the essential care from his parents and others. He received the gifts of God's provision through the wise man. He received the significant gift of response from the shepherds and from others, from the lowly and from the great, as is necessary to a king. Response from the great, the wise man. Response from the lowly, the shepherd. Portraying a response that was destined to be all-inclusive throughout the body of humanity. And in all of this, there was an exquisite and beautiful simplicity. Something clothed in the spirit of love and truth and life. If we are to allow the coming of the evidence of the kingdom, as those few then allowed the coming of the evidence of the king, we must realize that the qualities which characterize the coming of the king likewise characterize the coming of the king of the kingdom. Human minds have tended to attribute to the kingdom qualities which were not of the king. Now, just as surely as it was important for the salvation of man, for the king of the kingdom to come, so must the second step be taken, and the kingdom of the king must come into manifestation. Now, the king of the kingdom was a reality, and had been through the thousands of years prior to his birth in the form of a babe on earth. But the evidence of the presence of the king had been lost to the consciousness of man. So, in actual fact, what do we see in that babe that grew to be the body of a man? What do we see? Simply the evidence of the presence of the king. The king was a fact before, but the evidence of his presence was not adequately recognized by human beings. Therefore, in his coming, there was the evidence of the presence of the king, so made manifest that humanity has had to acknowledge it. But the meaning of that evidence has not been adequately comprehended or grasped. Its significance has been limited because human beings have failed to comprehend the fact that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And they have not taken any real steps toward providing the coming of the evidence of the presence of the kingdom. They were going to be good so that when they die they could go to heaven, or they were going to be saved, or when Jesus comes, then everything will be all right. 1,001 concepts and ideas, but nothing actually done according to the divine pattern. Nothing actually worked out. So if we accept the evidence of the presence of the King, as that evidence was made manifest 19 centuries ago, then to be consistent and to let that have any meaning, we must likewise accept our responsibility in letting the evidence of the coming of the kingdom, or of the presence of the kingdom, in fact, now come. And if we this morning can see this point clearly, and if it penetrates deeply into consciousness so that it is not forgotten in any moment of time, so that it conditions everything we think and say and do, every attitude we express in life, then the new year shall have true meaning unto us. But to whatever degree we fail to comprehend this, and let it be a central conditioning factor in our lives, the new year will be meaningless unto us, filled with miseries, turmoils, and difficulties, unnecessarily. So, the coming of the kingdom, the coming of the evidence of the kingdom, the coming of the king, the coming of the evidence of the king, because in actual fact they who then lived did not see the king, except as his evidence was made manifest through the body that was called Jesus. The inner reality of the king and the body were one, yes. But it was the evidence of the presence of the king shining through that body that made him meaningful. And if we let the evidence of the presence of the kingdom shine through us, we too will be meaningful. He revealed amply, adequately, the evidence of the presence of the king. It is not our task to try to do what he did. We are delegated to doing the greater works. Providing the evidence of the presence of the kingdom, not just of the king. He provided that. And if we look at his life, we see the evidence of the presence of the king. But what have those who have since lived done about providing the evidence of the presence of the kingdom? For only as the evidence of the presence of the kingdom appears can the fact of the king have meaning on earth. The king was a fact before the time of Jesus, during the time of Jesus, and has been since. That fact was given evidence by his coming. Where is the evidence of the presence of the kingdom? If we let that be made manifest, the meaningfulness of the king will automatically appear. But the meaningfulness of the king is prevented on earth until human beings allow the evidence of the presence of the kingdom in their lives and circumstances. And that is our responsibility, to bring into manifestation on earth the evidence of the presence of the kingdom. And then through that, the king shall make his presence known. But the king cannot make his presence known except through his kingdom. And to whatever degree, individually or collectively, we reject the opportunity of letting the evidence of the presence of the kingdom be made manifest, we reject the king and make our lives to be of no effect. Herein rests the answer to every question, the solution to every problem of health, of circumstance, of life, without any exception. Herein rests the key to the answer to every problem, every question, that we may know the evidence of the presence of the kingdom here on earth. And its coming in us will bring to us the same sweetness, the same wonder and beauty and glory. It was made evident in the coming of the King. And if we try to bypass the kingdom and to get these wonderful things directly from the King, we may delude ourselves a bit, but we will not have them. It is only as we yield ourselves to the task of serving God and man, by allowing the manifestation of the evidence of the kingdom, that we can receive these things, these heavenly things, and have them added unto us. So, we can continue to confuse the pattern of our lives in this new year that is at hand by the cross purposes of the world, the conflicting endeavors, or we can start clean and right for this new year. Not trying somehow vicariously to relive the coming of the King as in the long ago, and not postponing our fulfillment to some supposed second coming. For his second coming is through his kingdom, and by no other means. A second coming, yes, through his kingdom, but that kingdom must precede and not follow the second coming of the King. So, if we let this be the centering of the conditioning factors in our lives through the new year, we shall accomplish something to the glory of our King. If not, then it will be of no avail. But in this day and time, since he did reveal the evidence of his presence as a king, the evidence of his presence as a king must appear by reason of the evidence of the presence of his kingdom. That is our purpose here. And let it be clear in all that we do this coming year that the increase of the evidence of the presence of the kingdom as revealed in and through and by our lives through this coming year may glorify the King and be a blessing to all who will accept the evidence made manifest. The evidence of the presence of the kingdom of the King. Our gracious Holy King, we do not seek this morning further evidence of thy presence in the kingdom, for we accept thee as thou art and yield to thee that thy will may be done in earth as it is in heaven. But rather would we seek diligently at all times and in all ways to allow the manifestation of the evidence of the presence of thy kingdom, that thou mayest be revealed on earth through thy kingdom, and that all who will may become citizens of thy kingdom, knowing that thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever.